Thank you, Don. Thank you, Pop-Up Choir. Welcome to everybody in the sanctuary and those out in virtual world. Always good to have you with us. We're a little bit light this morning. I don't think it's the weather. This is my theory. Everyone is in Las Vegas waiting to see if Taylor Swift shows up for the Super Bowl. That's what's going on. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So for those of you here, you know what that means when the weather is rough and we have just a few folks or whatever. Everybody who makes the effort to be here gets extra Jesus points, okay? So there you go. Use those however you choose. All right, so let's get started today. I'm going to ask a question. Does anyone else here ever watch those home transformation shows on television? You know, HGTV and some of those other things. Aren't those amazing? The work that they can do and those transformations that can happen, you know, for throughout the years. Richard and I have redecorated our homes multiple times from the comfort of our couch, and it didn't cost us a dime. So you can imagine our dismay back in 2011, 2012. We were living in Chicago in a bungalow, and we decided it was time to invest some money in our little 7 by 12 galley kitchen, right? So we decided to have it gutted and redone. It cost more than a dime. It cost many, many dimes, we learned. We were quite dismayed by that. Looked great, though. Looked great. But if you watch those shows closely, however, you know, rarely is the transformation process smooth, right? There's all kinds of stuff going on. And I know, you know, to keep your interest, I'm pretty sure they amp up the drama, right? Just to keep your interest. But there is still some, you know, emotion going on there. You see, you know, the people walk in who are going to do it, the contractors, and they lay out the plans, and it's like, we're going to take out all these walls. And you see some of the homeowners like, what, whoa, what? And then during the show, the contractors always find something wrong, right? They had like a $50,000 budget to do a couple of rooms, and it's like, well, we're going to have to play with the budget a little bit, but not by much. We just have to up it by $25,000. And people are like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Right? And then they walk in and they've like gutted the entire room. It's down to the studs, and their eyes are like, what? But by the end of the show, you know, they always close their eyes and then open your eyes, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. It's worth every dime we put into it. But I don't know if y'all knew this or not, if you've heard, I've never seen this on television, but I've read articles before where not everyone's always excited about what happens. So I've read a few articles where there's some of these shows where they're not really happy with how things turned out. That's the show I want to see. That's the one I want to see. It's like, what? You painted my grandmother's hope chest. That was a family heirloom. Or what is that baby poop brown color that you put on my wall? I did not tell you to do that. Hardwood floors, we just put the carpet down 2 years ago. No. Y'all got to start all over again, and I'm not paying for any of it. That's the show I want to see. Of course, there are all kinds of transformations in life, right? We're not just talking about homes here, all kinds of life transformations. And reality television seems to have jumped on just about all of those. And as silly as some of those shows may seem to us, one thing we can learn from them is transformation is challenging. It's rarely smooth, and it is rarely pretty. So today's topic is transformation. We're going to talk about life transformation and the feelings that we can experience during those times and how we can navigate those. And I'm going to go to the Bible for some ideas. Now, in Unity, if you don't know, in Unity we don't teach the Bible literally, we look at it metaphysically, and we actually teach that the Bible is the story of humanity's generation, degeneration, and regeneration. So if you look at the overall storyline of the Bible itself, you can say it is the story of humanity's transformation. So all kinds of stories about transformation in the Bible. The one I'm focusing on today is known as the transfiguration of Jesus, and you're going to find it in all of the gospel readings. Now, this story traditionally is interpreted as a way of setting Jesus apart or setting Jesus above the rest of humanity somehow. At the same time, I believe we can reinterpret this story and look at it in a way which makes it somewhat more relatable to us in the 21st century. At least that's the goal. So we're going to set up the story. Just before the Transfiguration, the Jesus movement has been picking up steam. More and more people are getting on board with the teachings of Jesus. So he's with this crowd and with his 12 closest followers, the disciples or the apostles. They're in this group, and he starts telling them that to follow him, to follow his teachings, to follow the Jesus way, is probably going to get them in some trouble. All of them. They will be persecuted. They may be arrested. The Roman authorities may actually kill some of them. So following the Jesus way or following Jesus' teachings is going to be challenging. Now, to say the least, these teachings upset quite a few people, including his 12 closest followers. So, I can imagine them now. What is he saying? The offerings now, the love offerings, have just now begun to kick in. People are starting to follow us. We're starting to get popular. Not as popular as Taylor Swift, but we're getting popular. And there he goes with all this persecution stuff. Is he kidding? He was not kidding. So it had to cause quite a bit of confusion and discomfort. Confusion, discomfort. And that is often how a lot of our life transformations begin, isn't it? This is what some people call feelings of holy discontent. Perhaps, for example, you're out and about and you see someone standing on the corner panhandling like we do sometimes, or you see scenes of homelessness and hunger on television on the local news, and you just can't unsee it. It just keeps in the back of your mind. You can't let it go. You're uncomfortable. Maybe you begin feeling that nudge or that shove from spirit that makes us realize that something has to change in our personal lives. Perhaps there's some kind of behavior or some kind of relationship we've got going on that we know is not healthy, it is not good for us, and we just can't let it go. We can't rationalize it away anymore. Whatever the case is, we're uncomfortable, and we don't like that, do we? So what do we do about that? Well, let's go back to our story and see what our master teacher Jesus did. I'm going to start with the more traditional interpretation of the Transfiguration, and then I'm going to expand it out a bit metaphysically. All right? So we have this set up where Jesus has had that great recruitment speech for the Jesus movement, right? Persecution, self-denial, and possibly death. So he takes Peter, James, and John with him up the mountain to pray for a little alone time. And while on the mountain and while in prayer, Scripture says that Jesus was suddenly transfigured before them, and his clothes began to shine a sparkling, bright, dazzling white. And if that wasn't enough, suddenly Moses and Elijah, long since dead and gone, appear with Jesus. And Jesus is just hanging out and talking with Moses and Elijah. Now, can you imagine what Peter, James, and John were thinking? Because, it's not every day that you see the two most famous dead people from your religious tradition show up and start talking to the guy that you follow, right? At least see that and live to tell about it. So, that had to be a little unnerving. So what did they do? Did they bask in awe and reverence of the moment and just do that? No. Peter, as Peter was usually known to do, spoke up right off the bat. Like, wow, this is great. This is amazing. I'm sure he was scared to death. But this is great. This is amazing, right? Let's build booths for these guys. In other words, what he's trying to do is honor Elijah, Moses, and Jesus in a way which was spiritually and religiously appropriate for their culture. That's understandable. You built these structures for people to honor them, to enshrine the moment. Yet before they could get the project going, Elijah and Moses gone. And there's just Jesus in that dazzling, bright, white, robe, or in that aura type of thing. So they're wondering what's going on. What happened to Elijah and Moses, right? But before they can figure that out, a cloud comes over them. And there's this booming voice from the cloud that says, "This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Bet y'all didn't know my voice could go that low, did you? Neither did I. So, that's great, right? It's a very dramatic story. It gets your attention. How does any of that apply to us? While a literal reading of this story depicts Jesus as being transfigured, I want to expand that and say we can also apply it to the transformation process of Peter, James, and John, who were there witnessing that. See, I believe they had a moment too. This isn't just about Jesus, because if it was just about Jesus, that's great for Jesus, but it really doesn't do anything for the apostles or for anyone else. So I'm expanding this. They had a moment. They had a transformational moment as their views of Jesus, who he was, and what he was about was transformed in their minds. So what are we going to do with this? How can we apply it to our lives today? Well, first, when we're feeling that confusion and discontent at the beginning of our transformations, when we know something's going on, something's going to have to change, the first thing we do is find our mountain. And what I mean by that is we find those holy spaces where we can go and take a deep breath and just stop for a minute. We go into what Unity calls the silence. We go within to pray, to meditate, to go connect with Spirit. And this is important too. We never go alone. Now, I'm not saying we take 3 of our best friends with us and go into this. You can. People do that. But what I'm saying is, some of you already know this. Peter in Unity represents our power of faith. John represents our power of love. And James represents our power of strength, which is what Reverend Robin talked about last week. We go into prayer. We go into the silence. We go to the mountain with our 12 powers, all of them. But we go with faith, love, and strength. We take that with us. Peter, James, and John were not alone. Jesus wasn't alone. We are not alone. And as we move forward in this process, like Peter, James, and John, we too can have our own breakthrough moments. We see Moses and Elijah. And what I mean by that, metaphysically, is we see more of the Christ consciousness. We feel more of the Christ consciousness. Our understanding of our own divinity in Christ consciousness begins to evolve and to change and to grow. Peter, James, and John, you can say in seeing Jesus transfigured, saw the light. We can see the light too. Now, we may not literally see Charles and Myrtle Fillmore show up with Jesus, but we see the light. Our evolving understanding of our Christ consciousness grows. And don't you love it when that happens? We've all had those moments, right? We've had those moments when you've been in prayer and meditation, and maybe you've been upset going into it, but after a while you just kind of connect. And you breathe. And you understand, and you feel good. And what do we do when that happens? Do we sit there in the awe and the reverence of the moment? Do we stay in the silence? No. Usually not. We're kind of like Peter. We have a breakthrough moment, we think we got it, and boom, we're gonna do some projects. We have to get up. We have to get out of the silence. Why? Because we don't like silence, do we? Silence is uncomfortable for a lot of us. What is it? Nature abhors a vacuum. So do we. We want to fill the silence with something. I call this we take something that we've discovered, our breakthrough, and we want to put it in a booth of absolutes. And that makes sense because we found something that works. And we want to hang on to that, and we want to enshrine it as absolute truth. And that makes sense. But did you know that back in biblical times, these booths that Peter was talking about, they were temporary. Booths were meant to be temporary structures. The booths that in our lives, the things that we want to put our breakthrough moments in and enshrine them and never let them go, they're temporary. They're beautiful. They're great. They're wonderful oases, landmarks on our journeys, but they aren't meant to be permanent. We are meant to continue to grow and evolve in our lives. Yes, we do need to stop for a while. Take some time. Process the breakthrough moments. Stay in the silence for a bit. But that's kind of tough because it requires trust. Have you ever noticed when it's really quiet how out of control you are? You're just not in control of the moment. If you're not trying to fill it with a project or something else to do, have you noticed how out of control or uncomfortable that feels? But did you know it's in those moments, in the silence, when we are in the least amount of control, that is when we are most open to hearing what Spirit has to say to us. That's when our minds are the most quiet. So as we say in the South, set a spell and pack your patience. Set a spell, yes, and don't allow mold to grow on you. What I mean by that, just like in the story in the Bible today, the time always comes for us to get up off the meditation cushion, to get up off the prayer chair, whatever we're doing, and head back down the mountain. That's what Jesus did with those three guys, Peter, James, and John. Time to go. They got up and they went after a time. See, these spiritual oases of refreshment are great for us. They strengthen us for the journey ahead. They aren't meant to be permanent places for us to stay. We come down from the mountain, and just like Peter, James, and John, and Jesus, what we have gained from our transformation experience, we put to work in our lives. So what does that look like? Maybe in those moments we realize, that relationship that I've been dealing with, whether it's family or something else going on, I'm ready to make a change. Something has to change. I know what to do, and I'm going to do it. For people in recovery, that may mean that, you know what? I need to get serious about this, and I need to quit rationalizing my behavior. Probably need to find a meeting. Probably need to find a therapist. I need to find something. In our spiritual lives, that may mean, you know what? I have been sitting in meditation, I don't know how long. It's time I do something with this. Yes, life transformation experiences are challenging to say the least. They start with feelings of discomfort. They start with feelings sometimes of wonder, amazement, and probably a little bit of fear too. Because life is a lot to process sometimes, isn't it? But here's the good news. As crazy as all that can be, transformation is still possible. Remember, in unity, we are a people of possibility. Yet, to open our eyes to see and our ears to hear, as the Bible may say, to experience these transformations does require a few things from us. To review, find your mountain. Find that holy, quiet space where you can pray or meditate, center in your oneness with Spirit. Open ourselves to what Spirit may be having to say to us. And celebrate. Take a moment to celebrate the illumination of your Christ consciousness, because it's going to happen eventually, folks. It may not happen in one sitting. It may not happen in 2 or 3, but eventually it does happen. Celebrate your transformation. Sit a spell. Open yourself to Spirit. And you know what's next, right? Unity's 5th principle. Again, get up off the meditation cushion, the prayer chair, go back down the mountain, and put it to work in the world. Why? Because it's not enough to know that transformation is possible. We must live as a transformed and as a transforming people. Notice the ing. Transformation is not a one-time shot. It is a process. So, you have homework this week. See, I haven't been here for a week or so, so now you get homework. Are you ready? Pray, meditate, journal, whatever works for you, on 2 questions. Ready? Question number 1. What would it mean for me to live as a transformed and transforming person? What would it take? What would it require of me to live as a transformed and transforming person? Oh, and you're going to love this second one. What would it mean for Unity of Gainesville to live as a transformed and transforming spiritual community? What would it mean for Unity of Gainesville to live as a transformed and transforming spiritual community? Because you know what? It's not just about us individually. It's about community too. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this? Don't stress. Remember, we are never alone. So what I'm saying is, you got this. All right? And so it is.